Hi, welcome to the Nurse Coach Duo. This week's episode, we have a fellow nurse coach, Suzanne Greiner, who works with women in midlife and around perimenopause and menopause. And we're so excited. She's going to talk to us in depth about insulin resistance, which is a very common finding and complaint of that we hear from women in midlife. And we're going to learn and talk all about it.
Hi, welcome to the Nurse Coach Duo. I'm Jen Schroer, owner of Clarity Health and Wellness Coaching.
And I am Angie McGuire, owner of Coach Angie. And we are so excited to introduce you to another board certified nurse coach that we welcome on the Nurse Coach Duo today. And we have Suzanne Greiner with us. So welcome, Suzanne. We're so happy for you to join us today and talk about midlife and perimenopause and menopause. But first, I'm going to just give your bio a little bit, and or not a little bit, but all of it. So here we go. Suzanne is a board certified nurse coach and women's midlife coach who specializes in guiding women through perimenopause and menopause with clarity, confidence, and compassion. I love that. 3 C's. Love that. With over 26 years of nursing experience, she combines clinical expertise with a whole person approach to help women understand what's really happening in their bodies, manage symptoms, and reclaim their energy and vitality. She's passionate about breaking the silence around menopause, perimenopause, offering real answers, personalized support, and a supportive community to help women thrive, not just survive this season of life. A proud mom of 3, she finds balance and inspiration in the outdoors. Hiking, spending time in nature, and staying active are all few of her favorite ways to recharge and stay connected to what matters most. So welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you so
Again,
much for having me. I am
yeah,
excited to be here.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Love all of us, all 3 nurse coaches
Yes.
getting down to perimenopause.
Absolutely.
Love that. So I know you're living in Colorado, yeah?
Yes.
Jen's in St. Louis, I'm in Chicago, so we're, love that too. Trying to cover the bases and get and talk more about nurse coaching, but of course about perimenopause and women in midlife. So I guess the first question, what inspired you to become a nurse coach?
Well, it's the funny question is, I was hiking with one of my friends, and she had been looking into becoming a nurse coach, and I've always been like inspired by personal development. I've always been that type of person, but I never knew how to like bring that into the nursing world of like, how do I do that? How do I pull in this personal development work that I've been working on? Because I had a history of working in the intensive care unit, the cardiac cath lab, pre-op and PACU, and then transitioned into healthcare IT. I'm like, how can I bring that into my role as a nurse? And it was just always in the back of my mind. And then I went hiking with one of my friends one day and she goes, you need to check into nurse coaching. She goes, I'm checking into it. And she goes, I think we should do this. And I'm like, I don't want to coach nurses. And she's like, no, 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 no. This is why
Yeah.
we went into nursing. This is going back into our wellness, like prevention, all this stuff where what we wanted to do when we first became a nurse is really make a big difference in a patient's life and really take a look at the whole person versus just the diagnosis or the disease state. And so she talked to me about that. And we looked into a couple different programs and ended up going through the same nurse coaching certification program together. And it was awesome. And that was like that post-pandemic 2021 decision, like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life kind of feeling? And I think where a lot of people were evaluating that, and that was during that time frame. And so it's coming up on 4 years, which is amazing and crazy that it's been, 4 years, but it doesn't seem like it's been that long. So yeah.
That's awesome. Angie and I have both shared our story about how we got into nurse coaching. And it's kind of similar. Like it's looking for that connection to why we all
Mhm.
started, right? And really, and plus we learned so much over the course of our 20 some years in nursing. And it's like, okay, let's branch out and start really focusing on like more than that little time that we get in the hospital or the little time that we get in a clinic or something like that.
Right. And I
Um,
feel like it's expanded so much more now that I'm in it. And then you're
Mhm.
like, your eyes are more open than they were before. Like, oh my gosh, this is like such a, like our healthcare system is so, and is so much in disarray. And it's just like,
yeah.
we as nurses can bring such valuable information to our patients. And it's just like, it's so much bigger than what I thought it was when I first came into this program. So,
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I really think we could be the change for healthcare for sure. Nurse coaches are just, we really can bring so much more to the table than I think we're expected to. And Angie and I have
right,
talked about that some about, everyone
Mhm.
thinks nurses should just be at the bedside. Well,
right.
and like you, Angie and I both focus on perimenopause, menopause, and like I said, we've shared our story. So we'd love to hear like what your story is about why you chose perimenopause as your focus, because as you know, nursing is so wide variety of what we can do and where we can go. So finding one area to focus is really hard for us, right? Because
Right.
we want to help everybody, but yeah, we both found that as a place we wanted to focus as well. So we'd love to hear your story.
And I think if you would have asked me or told me like in 2021, when I first started this, you're going to be coaching women in perimenopause, I would have thought you were crazy because, and I ended that or finished up with my certification. And I was just like, I don't know what particular area I want to go into. So I just started coaching women that were my age, going through life, going through different transitions, midlife, like their kids are getting older, they're more independent. They don't rely on you, and you're trying to rediscover who you are and your role is in this world. So I really worked on that. I went through a divorce, and so I was, working with some women that were just wanting to move forward after the divorce, not like in the middle of the divorce, but they're like, okay, I'm ready to live my life, so much differently than I did before. And then about 2 years ago, I started noticing some changes within my own health. And I couldn't, I always say it's like this, I couldn't figure out, like, as nurses, like we investigate everything, like, why am I feeling this way? And why, like, I had these random symptoms. It started off with joint pain. And then it started off with like this weight gain. And then finally it hit brain fog. I had brain fog. And that's when I realized, like, I think this is in perimenopause, but I was trying to find that invisible string that connected all these random symptoms that I was having. And I couldn't figure it out until finally, when I had that brain fog, then I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like, I think I'm in perimenopause. And at the time I was 47. And I was just like, I felt like as soon as I admitted it, it's like, oh, like I felt this shame. I'm like, I'm actually getting older. And it was just like all these emotional components here. And I'm like, why am I feeling this way? And like, as a nurse coach, I'm like, addressing myself, like, why am I feeling this way? And then I was just like, okay, I need to, my symptoms were getting worse. And I was just like, I noticed like I had increased fatigue. I like would go to sleep and sleep for, 7 hours or something. I'd wake up and I feel like I still needed to sleep for 3 more hours because I wasn't rested, and all these random symptoms. So I started writing down all these symptoms I was experiencing in my life, and just did a bunch of research on perimenopause. And by the time I like had written down this list, I had 17 different symptoms of perimenopause. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize like all these symptoms were all related to that. So I ended up going to, I was due for my yearly appointment with my physician. And so I'm like, oh, I'll just talk to her. Like she's a little bit older than I am. I'll just talk to her. Like she will direct me. I just had this assumption she would direct me in the right direction. Yep, this is what we need to do. I went to there looking for solutions. And so I walked into my appointment, and she comes into the exam room and she goes, hey, how are you doing? And up to this point, I've been very healthy. Like I've never had to go into there for very like, maybe like occasional, what illness here and there, but otherwise really healthy. I said, oh, I think I have perimenopause. I think I'm in perimenopause, and I have about 17 symptoms. And as soon as I said that to her, she was kind of like, taken aback. And I probably shouldn't have said I had 17 symptoms. But she asked me two questions. She goes, are you still having your menstrual cycle? I said, yes. However, I have an IUD. It's not the same as it has been in the past. I've noticed some differences. And then
Mhm.
she goes, are you having hot flashes? I said, no. Out of the 17 symptoms I had, not one of them was a hot flash. And she looked at me and she goes, I have 20 minutes to spend with you. She goes, we can either talk to you about your perimenopause or we can talk to you about your yearly appointment, but I don't have time to talk to you about both. And I sat there and I was just like, I started to tear up because I'm not, it just came crashing into me that I was just like, now I know how my patients have felt not being heard by when they go into a physician's office and like I have these issues. And it just like hit me. I'm like, I feel miserable. And I just felt like she wasn't going to listen to me. And no fault to her. Like our healthcare system is kind of messed up where like insurance only allows them to, a 20-minute visit for us to be with them. And so she literally didn't have the time. But I knew whatever I said moving forward, she was on a time limit with me. And so I didn't feel as though I could be open enough to tell her in more detail what was going on. I was just like, okay, whatever. And so she saw me tear up and she's like, okay, tell me about your symptoms. Because I knew I needed my yearly and I didn't want to have to come in for another appointment. It was just like stacked on top of everything. Because as a busy mom, like I don't have time to make another appointment to go on. Let's just do this all at one time. But she's like, okay, tell me tell me what's going on. So I just kind of ran through my list of my symptoms, and she got to the two symptoms of increased anxiety and brain fog, and she was like, oh, I can start you on an anti-anxiety medication that will help you with these symptoms. And it will improve, your brain fog and will improve your anxiety. And I looked at her because I've had training as a nurse coach in functional medicine. I just looked at her and I said, absolutely not. I am not taking this medication because this is treating the symptoms of perimenopause, not the root cause, which is my fluctuations of my hormones. And she looked at me and she's like, what? She was surprised I didn't take the prescription. I left that appointment. I sat in my car and I cried. Out of the 20, at the time, 25 years of nursing, I've never, ever felt that way. And I'm like, if I'm being treated this way, being a nurse, knowing how to navigate a healthcare system, knowing how to advocate for my own health and advocating for other people's health and well-being, if I'm being treated this way, how many thousands and thousands of women are being treated this way every single day? And they are like, you just have to tough it out, or this is just a part of life, or no, we can't start you on any hormone replacement therapy until you hit menopause, or no, here's a prescription for this and that, and not addressing the root cause. And I made a promise to myself in that car. And I said, I never want another woman to feel the way I'm feeling right now. And so from that point forward in 2024, the first half of 2024, I really focused on my own health and well-being, going through perimenopause, like researching, understanding what I need to know to take care of my own personal health first. And then the last half of 2024, I was helping some clients, during that, first part of 2024, but the second half of 2024, I really put into action the things I learned into my own clients' stories and just being able to help them through their own personal transformation in perimenopause and menopause. So kind of a long story, but it was like my own personal experience led me into coaching women in this, because it was just like, if I'm going through this, how many thousands of women are experiencing this? And I would like to say my story was unique, and it's not. It's actually very, very common. So yeah. So
thank you so much for sharing all that, because I do think we say it's common, but I'm still not convinced people or women are talking about it, right? And they want to talk to their providers about it, especially if you have a relationship, but often are let down and, leave confused from appointments and sad and anxious and maybe more anxious than they were when they walked in. So I'm just so happy that we can spend this time together and, again, like promote this idea to continue talking about this, right?
Right.
Telling our sisters, everyone we know, right? Friends about this. So people don't feel like this, right? Women don't feel like this walking into their
I feel like it starts with that feeling of something doesn't feel right, but I can't put my finger on it. And they don't know how to communicate that to their provider. And because it's like that qualitative measure. It's not quantitative. Like, I'm having a fever, it's very like, you can't put a number on that when you don't feel that, how you're supposed to normally feel.
Right. And our health system is driven by data, right? And numbers. And that's, think about everything we assess as nurses. There's a number really related to that. And so, hopefully someday there'll be, policy procedure. People will walk in and they'll,
Yeah,
but that's why we're working on
let's
what
dive
we're
into
working
this.
on. It'll be a standard of care eventually. There's a lot of people out there fighting for that. So you mentioned 17 symptoms that you experienced. What is your favorite topic or symptom to address with the clients that you work with? And it might not just be one, but I think you did want to talk
Yeah.
specifically on, which is
Yes,
very
there's definitely so I did get lab work done that day of just my normal labs, not hormonal labs whatsoever. And one of the things that scared me the most was, and I also had gained about 25 pounds in about 9 to 10 month time frame. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, like I have gained this much weight. And that's very common during this time frame. But I noticed my hemoglobin A1C, I was now pre-diabetic. And I was just like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm active. I feel like I don't eat like terribly. I feel like I eat really good, but I'm like, I'm pre-diabetic. I'm like, this like is not okay with me. I was kind of freaking out about it. And the more and more research I did about this is that it's very common to become more insulin resistant during this time frame as a woman going through perimenopause. And I was just like, okay, what do I need to do? Because for me, I'm like, I want to figure out why my body is reacting this way. Like what's going on, understanding, my hormone, like number one, like understanding hormones, like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, like understanding all of that. And then how the effects of, the fluctuation of these hormones, what does it do to my body? And what I found out is that with the fluctuations of estrogen that we have during perimenopause and menopause, we actually become more insulin resistant during this time frame. And it's just a lot of it has to do because that estrogen does a lot of things to our cells to be able to increase that insulin sensitivity so we can actually regulate our blood sugars better. But during this fluctuation and this time during perimenopause and menopause, when we don't have that estrogen, we become more insulin resistant. So I've had a lot of clients who are like, oh my gosh, I'm now pre-diabetic, and they're freaking out too, because we all know like long-term, like type 2 diabetes, we don't want to, go down that path because there's so many other health factors. So I had to learn like, why this is happening. And a lot of times it's just like our body is trying to like, I equate like going through perimenopause and having all these symptoms is like our body wants us to naturally be in homeostasis. Like it's always working hard to get in homeostasis. And during perimenopause, it's that chaos of hormones kind of happening, fluctuations up and down in every direction. But it's one of those things that our body's finally signaling to us and telling us and giving us these symptoms that like the 17 different symptoms I have, like it's signaling to us like, hey, I need help. Like I'm doing working hard as well as much as I can to keep up. But now I'm signaling to you and giving you these symptoms, like I need a little bit of assistance. And so knowing that my body is trying to be in homeostasis and like I need to like help it, I knew I needed to really work on my nutrition foundationally within that. What do I need to do with my nutrition? How do I need to change that? So that's where I kind of started, was like really understanding the nutritional changes I needed to make, because I feel like nutrition is foundation, because we want to get our cells working efficiently for us. And I feel like nutrition is a good place to start with that.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Wow, yeah, there's a lot in there. Yeah, insulin resistance, I think that's maybe not a topic that everybody fully understands. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit and then I'll ask you a couple of questions as well. But when you talked about like your hemoglobin A1C going up, I really want to like make sure people understand that like that's a late symptom, right? When you are pre-diabetic, it's already too late. So if you are experiencing anything like that, or even if you're not, if you're already going to your doctor, we should really be asking our doctors to do a fasting insulin.
Yep.
And it's not a very expensive test if your insurance won't cover it, because that's finding people's diabetes 10 years ahead of time.
Right.
So, we are going, I mean, I literally just encouraged a client to do that the other day, and she went to her doctor and with a slew of different labs that I told her that are just regular labs. They were nothing
Right.
crazy. And he said, I don't see that. That's why that's necessary. And told her no, which of course my answer was, let's get you a new doctor.
Right.
And I could, and I coached her on how she can have that conversation and make sure that she stands up for herself and advocates herself for herself. But I do find that a lot of people don't understand diabetes. I had someone in my family that became diabetic or pre-diabetic and didn't really understand that it was dangerous. I talked to another person and, talked about managing your blood sugar. What does that mean? So if you could just dig in a little bit there, explain a little bit about what insulin resistance is, explain how we manage our blood sugar when
Right.
even if you're not diabetic. I think we should all live like we're diabetics. So,
Yeah.
what do you to explain that and how you do that with your nutrition, if you would?
Yeah. So the insulin resistance is like especially during perimenopause, is that estrogen is not making those cells more insulin sensitive, because the estrogen is helping that insulin sensitivity in a normal, life lifespan up until perimenopause, menopause. And then once we lose that estrogen, our cells are not as sensitive to the insulin. So then our blood sugars increase over time. And I think it's so important, like you pointed out, that insulin, fasting insulin is like actually really good measure. And a lot of functional medicine doctors do actually, pull those numbers. I've never had a fasting insulin until I just recently, signed up through Function Health and just had a
Yes.
big slew of lab work done. I'm like, let me just see where I'm at. And so I did that. That was my birthday gift to myself at the beginning of the year. And so I'm like, now this is the first time I've had my fasting insulin. And I'm like, I love it because I'm like, now I know as at a baseline, where it's at. Obviously, so mine was on the very low end of the pre-diabetic. So my hemoglobin A1C was like 5.9. And so some of the nutritional changes that I did over the course I was just like, I got to figure out what's going on. And I started somehow the glucose goddess on Instagram. I don't know if you follow her or not.
Yes.
I started implementing
Long
some
time
of her
ago.
measures. So her biggest thing is that she has this concept of never eating a carb naked. And I'm like, okay, this makes sense. So,
Mhm.
because I love my carbs and I think carbohydrates are so important for us, I don't like restricting it, because especially as women going through perimenopause and menopause, we want to do strength training. And if we don't have those healthy carbohydrates to do the strength training, we're not going to have the energy to really want to do the strength training too. So for, our body to do that. So I do feel like carbohydrates are so important, but the way you eat your food is even more important than actually, what you eat. I feel, or what you eat is important, but like how you eat your foods is even more important. So basically, the concept of never eating a carb naked is that anytime you have a complex carbohydrate, not the simple processed food carbohydrates, but the complex carbohydrates, you always want to eat a healthy fat, fiber, or protein with your carbohydrate. And the reason why you want to is because if you eat that carbohydrate by itself, you'll have a glucose spike and then you'll come crashing down. And when that blood sugar gets low, that's when you're like, oh, I'm hungry. Like I need to eat again. So then you want to eat more. When you combine that carbohydrate with a healthy fat, fiber, or protein, it actually makes that glucose level more level. It doesn't spike up, and you stay fuller longer because that glucose level lasts a little bit longer at a stable level. And then eventually it will come back down, but it doesn't, spike up and spike back down again like a normal carbohydrate. But when you pair that up with those type of foods, it's so important. The other thing too, like eating fiber, as Americans, we don't eat enough fiber. We should be eating, especially in perimenopause, 25 to 30 grams a day. That's super important because it helps with our visceral fat, as well as it helps maintain our glucose levels over time as well. So, and same thing with protein. They're super, super important concepts, or super important, to eat during this time frame, just for our muscle loss that we, kind of go through during this time frame. But just having that was, to me, the very first thing I did is I'm always going to pair my carbs up with a fat, fiber, or protein. The other thing that you can do is you can eat your foods differently. So if you have your dinner, you would want to eat your fiber first, or any, green leafy vegetables, you want to eat those first. Eat your protein second. And then the third thing you would want to eat is your carbohydrates. And that helps with that blood sugar regulation too during that time frame. So those were the top two things I did right away. And then I started doing some other exercise programs, but I really focused on that nutrition first, to really help bring my my hemoglobin A1C down. Yeah.
Yeah. Suzanne, I love that you talk about that you started the nutrition piece first and then exercise. And, some people want to start with exercise first, but, it's just, I think it can be so overwhelming especially when we're in that doctor's appointment that, someone tells, you have a 5.9 A1C, you're pre-diabetic, and you need to exercise and eat better, and that's what you leave
Right.
with. I mean, I think all three of us can say this is what we talk to our clients about, and it's so important of our role as a coach, as a nurse coach, is try to, give those, like, put it in increments, because you can't do
Right.
everything, in one day, right? So, name your favorite fiber. What's your favorite fibers?
I feel like chia
How do we
seeds.
get those 30 grams in a
Yeah.
day?
I feel like chia seeds are like that secret of like they have protein and fiber in there. It's like so good. I'm like, so like in the morning, I usually I have a protein shake that does have like 5 grams of fiber in it. So that's super helpful to get into that. But then fruits, raspberries were really good. I have a raspberry, blueberry, like a berry. Like I love eating berries, so those will definitely, be helpful. But chia seeds, like you add that, or flax seeds, you like, oh, this is extra, fiber
Yeah.
into my diet, and I love that because I really try to make sure by lunchtime I'm like pretty much almost at my goal of fiber, because anything after that is just like add it. So and not and then I'm not behind the 8 ball all day, like, okay, what can I eat? Okay, what beans again? Kind of thing. But there are a lot of like when I started, I'm not a big count my calories, macros type of person. I'm the type of person that let me just see what's like the foods that I normally eat, or what are some high fiber foods, and I kind of like these are the foods I normally like to enjoy, and like, okay, I'll make sure that I have a serving of this, a serving of that, and just kind of ballpark in my head. I'm like, okay, I'm about this much. So I'm not one to track every detail every day, because like I feel like a lot of Gen Xers, we have trauma from like tracking so
Yes.
many things, as we have
Yes.
been
Mhm.
like on the forefront for all these fad diets. It's just been like a fad diet after fad
Yeah.
diet, tracking this, tracking that. And I'm like, I'm exhausted from tracking things. I'm like, I don't want to track any more stuff. Like I want a ballpark idea. So maybe some days I'm at, 24 grams of fiber, or, maybe other day I'm at 35. Like it all depends, but I just have to be more conscious about the decisions I'm making with the foods I'm like eating. So, and that to me is more important to me than like, okay, I have to write this down kind of thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I think all our listeners, women in midlife, have heard eat protein, eat protein. You've already mentioned this.
yeah.
There's this number that, I feel like, and that you hear, and, one practitioner might say, 90 to 120 grams of protein. And then I've recently heard from one of our faves, Dr. Stacy Sims, eating the amount of grams that you weigh.
Yeah.
So as a 150-pound woman, I need to have 150 grams of protein. And, that can seem like a lot, again, overwhelming,
Yeah.
it's just like taking steps and getting there. And, I like to coach the 80-20 rule too. So it's like
Yeah.
not every day am I going to get 150 grams of protein in, but if I can do it, 5 days a week, or even just get 80% of 150, I don't, it's
Right.
just like
Right.
can,
Exactly. And I
it
think
just
too,
can be so overwhelming with all the information out
yeah.
there. And I mean, I think that's what we do best as nurse coaches, is try to put things in action for people, right? And
Yeah.
but no, thanks. I just wanted to, I like the fiber options, because that's another, thing that's all the rage. And I think people are looking, because I think people think about, taking laxatives, or,
Yeah.
like I think people
Well, that's,
associate
yeah.
fiber with that kind of, rather
Right.
than nutrition. Anyway,
I have
but
patients,
so
or people will ask me like, what's your favorite fiber supplement that you can take? And I'm like, I do food first. Like fiber,
yeah,
I feel is like in so many different foods. Like if you look for it, you're going to find the right fiber in the right foods. Like I try not to do the supplements unless I know for sure, like I'm not going to meet my goal for the week or whatever. Like, but I think my biggest thing is we live in a society that we want a pill to fix this and a pill to fix that, instead of like, no, like we really like have to look at our nutrition, like how we're eating our foods, what we're eating, and like making sure we are getting those nutrient dense foods in our diet, because that's so key for so many other different functionalities in our body that we need to have, and we can't overlook that.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
points.
great point.
Yeah, and I tell you, I really, I'm a data person too. I kind of get stuck in the data,
Nothing against data. Nothing
no,
against
even
data.
even though I think as nurses we really rely on our intuition as
Yeah.
well. But one
Yes.
thing that I really try to get my clients to do is like understand how it's hit, like to listen to their body.
Mhm.
So I do love a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, even if you only
Yeah.
use it once for like a month, just to learn what's going on in your body, because it's just like a wearable, right? Like any of our
Yeah.
wearables where we if we start to see the data and we see the fluctuations, you can learn so much. So like my family member who was put on metformin, not given any education, said she was pre-diabetic, sent home to just take her meds. I got her on a CGM and she was like, I can't eat strawberries. And I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, well, let's talk about this, And she's like, I spike when I eat strawberries. Well, she was eating them in the morning with nothing else.
Oh, yeah.
So I taught her exactly what you said, dress your carbs,
Yeah.
but it was so eye-opening for her to be able to see strawberries and bananas first thing in the morning with no
Right.
protein. I can't do that. If I want the jelly my mom made, I'm going to be able to eat that, but I have to eat it with peanut butter, and to
Right.
find those situations. Um, and also now she could see, like you were talking, that spike
Yeah.
and then that drop. And how did I feel when I spiked? And how did I feel when I dropped? So that when I get rid of that CGM, now I know, oh, I can't eat sweet potatoes without meat or what have you. So I
Right.
think it's so important
Yeah.
and like I said, I wish everybody lived their life like a diabetic because it's
Yeah.
important for all of us. It's the
Right.
literally the cause of all of our chronic diseases.
Right. And it's so true when you look at like what our food is like today versus like 30 years ago. Like we have
Yeah,
so many ultra processed foods, and like you don't know all the chemicals, what they will be doing to your body like long term or anything. Like, oh, we kind of do, but like, like in the moment you're not thinking about it, especially like a teenager in your early 20s, maybe, mid 20s, you're like, oh, whatever, junk food. Like I see so many, like my youngest is in middle school, and like they love their Cheeto. There's hot Cheetos. Like that's all they're like, all they want to eat is hot Cheetos. I'm like,
God.
you know how many chemicals are in that? And it's just gonna like
Right.
mess up everything. But I think it's so important that we have to become more aware of that. And I think for me, like when I started this journey, I was just like, I eat healthy, and I had to set my ego aside and
Yeah.
just be like, I have to be completely honest with myself. Because like if I'm gaining this weight and my hemoglobin A1C is elevated. Now it's down to 5.2. So it's just
Right.
with dietary changes and exercise too. Like it has come down, and I've lost some weight just by doing this measure. But like it's one of those things that you like, I had to set my ego aside and like, Suzanne, you have to be honest. And like, do I track my macros? I don't want to have to go back through that whole thing. But once I started understanding like fat fiber and protein, healthy fat fiber and protein are so essential to like when you eat a carbohydrate, I'm like, let me just do this. This seems to me like I can do this. I can always pair up, you know, carbohydrate with, a fat fiber protein. So I did that, and I'm like, oh, now I'm starting to see I was not addressing that. Just like, coffee first thing in the morning on an empty
Yes.
stomach probably isn't good for me. So it's just like modifying what you had been used to for several years. And like my body is different midlife. And so I need to treat it differently. I
Yes.
can't be treating it the
Mhm.
same way as I did in my 20s and 30s. Like my body's different. And if I want my 85-year-old body to be healthy and hiking mountains instead of laying in a
Yes.
nursing home, like I need to do measures now
Yeah.
that will contribute to that.
Yeah, like Naomi Watts said in her book, she had to break up with her previous self or her younger self. And
Yep.
it's really such a mindset. We have to break up with those ideas that we've had. And like you said, that Gen X, what we've been ingrained in us, calories versus, exercise more, eat less, calories in, calories out, all of these
Right.
just myths that we've
Yeah.
been living by. They don't work for our bodies anymore.
Right.
And that's okay. We're not
Yeah.
saying you have to make this extreme like lifestyle change of
Right.
like everything you've talked about is so tangible. It's so like it's I could do this tomorrow kind of things,
Right.
and like Angie said, one step at a time. It's not you're going to start a keto diet tomorrow. You're going to, get on the shot or whatever. It's just
Right.
simple changes that we can make and we can make a huge difference. So congrats to you for bringing down
Yeah.
your A1C like that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, I mean, we can even start like at dinner tonight, like just
Yes.
eating our food differently. That's just the
Yep.
first step that like, let me just change the order and how I eat my foods. Like that's so simple. Like, and that, yeah. And just kind of continue on. Like, and I think if you break it down to being like super, like it's simple. I'm like, I don't have to go out and like do a brand new, like, take everything out of my pantry kind of thing. And like, let me reorganize
Right.
everything. It's like, no, it's just these simple little concepts that are super important. But
Yeah. Love
yeah.
that.
I
Well,
wanted to
speaking,
throw out, oh, sorry, just a reference, I think, for our listeners is the American Diabetes Association website is a great website. Like just to learn about diabetes, not that because we often don't hear about diabetes. I mean, people throw it out there, but they don't understand it. But it's just a great website. There's a lot of nutritional information and also just more about what we're talking about today. So, and again, we should all eat that way. And so it gives a lot of information there on that type of nutritional intake. So.
yeah. Yeah, the glucose goddess that Suzanne recommended, if you are into Instagram or Facebook, I would highly recommend people to watch that because she just makes sense of it and it's quick little videos
Yeah,
and
that's great.
comments. She's amazing. But yeah,
Yeah.
so Suzanne, I was just gonna say, since you were saying, like simple changes, how to
Mhm.
start improving it's just life in general and your nutrition. If you had one piece of advice, and I know you've already kind of dropped so many great little pearls of wisdom in this, but if you had one piece of advice that you would want to leave our listeners with, especially the women in midlife and struggling with probably more than 17 of those symptoms,
Yeah.
what would that be?
Oh, I feel like there's a few. Can I do two?
Sure, of course.
Just
It's
to add
hard. It's
on,
hard to do just one.
add to add on to another change I made because of the insulin resistance is if you take a walk after you have a meal or move your muscles for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes after your meal, you can reduce your blood sugar or blood glucose by 17%. There's a study that came out recently or within the last 2 years that showed a decline in your blood glucose by 17% after a meal by walking like anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. It does, if you don't have time for a walk, even just doing squats, because what that does is pull that glucose that it's circulating in your blood vessels into your muscles to actually be able to, help your muscles contract and everything. So just doing that is super helpful. The other thing is, I think it's so, my last piece of advice is trust your intuition. And because as women, I feel like, especially Gen Xers, we have been dismissed a lot of times in our life. We've been told, oh, that's just, you're being crazy. And so we kind of quiet ourselves and maybe we dismiss our own intuition sometimes. And I feel like midlife is that, like you said, it's like breaking up with your former self. And you're like, oh my goodness, like I cannot, like, I need to trust my intuition. Once I started listening to my intuition and trusting it, it never steered me wrong. And as women, we either feel our intuition through our gut or through our heart. And I think it's so important that if that tiny voice is telling you something, it's more than likely it's your body telling you, like, listen to it and act on it.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. So, but yeah, I would leave with that little bit of advice is just really trust your intuition, maybe more now than you ever had in your life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome to leave on that note, right?
Yeah, fantastic.
Um, yeah. So I think we're gonna wrap it up then. Anything else? You made that point and a couple of points. I mean, you shared so much incredible information with us, and I love that we focused on nutrition because, as you said, I think that is a lost piece in the American health system, and it's to really, I don't, not to blame anybody, but it's time and
Yep.
where where we find our registered dietitians, they should all be in every office, right?
Right.
Or a nurse coach. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
So
absolutely.
that's my other point is you can find a nurse coach and we'll help you guide
Great.
you, right? In this
I feel
journey.
like
So
I feel like I made this post last week that having a nurse coach during your perimenopause journey is so important for you. Because sometimes our physicians that maybe are prescribing hormone replacement therapy or are dealing with women going through perimenopause, they have that 20-minute appointment. Sometimes they have the luxury of a consult appointment for women going through perimenopause and they have a little bit longer of time. But a nurse coach is essential for women to get what they need during this time frame. We provide that education, we provide that coaching, like understanding their whole body and what's going on emotionally, physically, spiritually we can bring that and really truly understand our, patients and help them meet their goals that they need, just by working with them. And we have that time, to be able to do that. And I feel like giving patients, like a prescription for HRT is great, but there's still so much more that they need to do beyond that prescription of HRT, beyond like maybe taking natural supplements for your menopause or perimenopausal symptoms. There's so much more that we can provide, and help guide those patients in the right direction.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. We will prepare you, right? And
Yes.
that's great. Well, thank you so much, Suzanne, for being with us today. And to our listeners, if you liked what you heard and you want to hear us again, please subscribe. And we'll have another visitor soon, to talk to you about another subject in midlife. And hopefully we'll have Suzanne back again and to talk more about nurse coaching and perimenopause and menopause and changes in midlife. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks.
All right, Suzanne, Jen and I like to do this, finish up with our guests with a little rapid fire. So are you ready?
I will be ready.
All right. Coffee or tea?
I'm coffee.
Me too. Cookie or cake?
Oh, I would say,
As she talked about insulin resistance.
I'm like,
you could say neither.
I'm not like I'm not a big cook. I'm not like, I don't like icing. So I'm not a big cake person unless it's angel food cake. Like, I feel like that one's okay. So
The spike in sugar is too high.
yes, exactly.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Comedy or horror?
Oh, comedy.
Your favorite self-care practice?
Hot bath. Oh, there's so many more though.
I love that. What if someone doesn't have a bath? What do you do if you have?
I like going outside for a walk.
Yeah, great. What's your favorite go-to energy boost?
Ooh, dancing.
Ooh, yay.
A quick little dance.
What are you looking forward to in midlife or during this time of life?
Oh, boundaries.
Too.
And one thing you wish you would have known about midlife?
All the physical changes that we go through.
Amen. Absolutely.
Forgetting names or losing your keys, what happens more often?
Forgetting names because I finally put my keys in one place.
All right.
It was losing keys, but definitely forgetting names. So.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you for playing our rapid fire. And thanks
Thank
for
you.
being here today.
This was fun.